Renowned economist and historian Richard Wolff has been outspoken about the patterns of rise and decline that characterize empires throughout history. In his analysis, he explains how empires grow through a process of expansion that inevitably reaches a point of unsustainability, triggering a slow and steady decline. Wolff argues that this decline is rooted in overreach, where empires overextend resources, take on multiple conflicts, and attempt to control vast regions. According to Wolff, the United States is at this critical stage, facing the consequences of its global ambitions as its influence and resources become increasingly strained. Understanding overreach, the catalyst for empire decline. In Wolff's view, overreach is an empire's tendency to extend its influence beyond sustainable limits. Historically, empires such as the British, Roman, and Ottoman have all faced similar cycles. As an empire grows, it requires more resources to maintain control over distant territories, enforce laws, and protect its interests. Over time, this expansion becomes unmanageable, leading to a weakened state as resources are stretched too thin. Wolff argues that overreach sets empires on an irreversible path to decline, causing them to lose control over territories, lose influence, and ultimately collapse. The British Empire provides a striking example of overreach. At its height, the British Empire spanned continents, from India to Africa to the Americas. The empire's need to maintain military, economic, and political power in these regions led to massive expenses and logistical challenges. Resistance grew in various colonies, and maintaining control became increasingly unsustainable, forcing Britain to relinquish territories. Today, Wolff sees similar challenges for the United States as it maintains a global military presence, intervenes in numerous conflicts, and funds alliances that demand enormous resources. Overreach is not just about geographic expansion, but also about taking on too many global responsibilities. For the US, its extensive involvement in global issues, such as the conflicts in the Middle East and supporting allies worldwide, requires substantial funding, logistical support, and manpower. As Wolff observes, this global reach comes at the expense of domestic priorities and economic stability, forcing the nation to make difficult choices between maintaining global power and addressing internal issues. American interventions. Examples of overreach in action. The history of US interventions illustrates the concept of overreach vividly. Following World War II, the United States emerged as a superpower, taking an active role in global conflicts under the pretense of promoting democracy, freedom, and stability. However, Wolff argues that these interventions have often led to costly and drawn-out conflicts with mixed results, demonstrating the limits of American power and the challenges of maintaining a global empire. One of the earliest examples is the Korean War in the 1950s, which ended in a stalemate, leaving the Korean peninsula divided. Though the war prevented the spread of communism in South Korea, it did not achieve a unified, stable region. The US was similarly unsuccessful in Vietnam, where years of intense fighting and heavy losses culminated in a withdrawal, leaving Vietnam unified under communist rule. These conflicts not only drained resources, but also raised questions about the effectiveness of US foreign policy and its ability to shape political landscapes. More recently, the US involvement in Afghanistan highlights the cost of prolonged foreign engagements. Over 2 decades, the US invested trillions in an effort to establish a stable government, but ultimately withdrew, leaving the Taliban in power. These repeated conflicts demonstrate that despite the investment of resources, long-term success in foreign policy is elusive. Wolff suggests that the US might face further consequences if it continues to extend its influence without clear, achievable goals. The diminishing role of the dollar. Economic indicators of decline. The US dollar's diminishing dominance in global trade is a crucial economic indicator that Wolff points to as a sign of the American empire's decline. Historically, the dollar has been the world's primary reserve currency, used widely in international trade and held by central banks worldwide. This dominance gave the US immense influence in global finance, allowing it to borrow extensively and fund both domestic and international initiatives. However, this reliance on the dollar has started to wane as other nations diversify their currency reserves. Nations such as China, Russia, and members of the European Union are gradually moving towards alternative currencies for international trade. For example, the euro and the Chinese yuan have grown in prominence, reflecting a shift away from dollar dependency. This change reduces the influence of US monetary policy on global markets and limits the power of US sanctions, which depend on dollar transactions to be effective. As a result, the ability of the US to wield financial power is reduced, challenging its role as a dominant economic player. Wolff believes this shift away from the dollar could lead to broader economic instability for the US, as its position as the world's banker diminishes. Without this advantage, the US might face higher borrowing costs, weaker leverage in international trade, and potentially decreased economic growth. These changes could further undermine America's influence on the world stage, reinforcing the broader patterns of decline. Geopolitical alliances, strains on resources and influence. A cornerstone of US foreign policy has been its alliances, most notably with Israel. Israel, initially supported by the British Empire, has become a stronghold of American influence in the Middle East. Over the years, the US has provided substantial financial, military, and political support to Israel, strengthening its position in the region. However, Wolff argues that the US's continued support has become a strain on resources, especially as the conflict between Israel and Palestine intensifies and involves neighboring nations like Lebanon. Wolff suggests that this alliance could become increasingly challenging as the US faces economic pressures. The resources required to support Israel and maintain stability in the region are significant, and with rising domestic issues and economic limitations, it is unclear whether the US can sustain this level of involvement indefinitely. The situation in Israel represents a microcosm of the broader issues facing the American empire, where long-standing alliances are costly but necessary for maintaining influence. In addition, the US is involved in numerous other alliances and commitments around the globe, from NATO to various bilateral partnerships. Each alliance requires resources and diplomatic effort, often entangling the US in conflicts that do not align with its direct interests. According to Wolff, this expansive web of commitments contributes to overreach and ultimately weakens the US's ability to respond effectively to global challenges, continuous warfare, and global exhaustion. Wolff highlights another key issue contributing to the decline: the toll of continuous warfare. Military engagements are costly, both financially and socially, leading to extensive economic and human resources being directed toward conflict rather than development or domestic improvement. As the US remains involved in various ongoing conflicts, from the Middle East to Eastern Europe, the continuous drain on resources becomes unsustainable. The psychological impact of perpetual warfare on society also cannot be ignored, as it fosters division and discontent among the public. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a primary example, where the US provides consistent support to Israel amidst recurring hostilities. This conflict, however, has no end in sight and perpetuates regional instability. Meanwhile, the US also supports Ukraine in its ongoing conflict with Russia. Yet, as the war drags on, it becomes clear that significant resources are required to achieve any meaningful outcomes. Wolff argues that these conflicts underscore the need for a shift from military intervention to diplomacy, as perpetual warfare only worsens the empire's decline. Wolff suggests that instead of relying on force, the US should invest in diplomacy and collaborative efforts. Historically, major conflicts often ended with agreements, and Wolff believes that early negotiations could prevent much of the devastation. By focusing on peaceful resolutions and collaboration, the US could lessen the strain on its resources and improve international relations, potentially slowing the pace of decline. The path forward. Embracing diplomacy. Over military power. Wolff concludes that the decline of empires can serve as a valuable lesson for the US. Rather than continuing the cycle of overreach, the US should consider reorienting its global strategy toward diplomacy and sustainable alliances. The global shift away from US dominance suggests a need for multilateral approaches where collaboration is prioritized over competition. By focusing on diplomatic resolutions and limiting unnecessary interventions, the US can foster stability in a way that is both economically feasible and sustainable. Wolff sees a future where the US steps back from empire building and instead embraces multilateralism, allowing other nations to share in the responsibility of global governance. This change would require a significant re-evaluation of foreign policy, a reduction in military spending, and an emphasis on building positive economic and cultural relationships worldwide. Wolff contends that such an approach could prolong American influence in a healthy, balanced way and avoid the pitfalls that doomed past empires. In the end, Wolff's analysis of empire decline offers a roadmap for the US to navigate the challenges of a multipolar world. By acknowledging the limits of power, focusing on diplomacy, and fostering economic collaboration, the US has the potential to remain a respected global leader, albeit in a more sustainable, less domineering capacity.
Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. Share this video and don't forget to hit the like button.